Hi there, this is Bob Kramer. Welcome back to Kramer's Garage. This video is going to be part 3 of the cylinder head porting series. So here's the cylinder heads. In part 2 I showed you how to assemble the cylinder heads, put the valves back in, put the cams in. I even adjusted the valve lash on the cams, on the rockers. Anyway, so those heads are ready to go on the engine. Now, on this bike, you do not have to pull the engine out of the frame to change heads. However, this engine has developed a couple of oil leaks that are kind of annoying, and they're not big, but they are annoying. So, I'm going to pull the engine out of the frame and fix the oil leaks, install the new heads, and put it all back together. And that's what this video is going to be about. So stay tuned, and you'll see how to get that engine out of the frame and back in. And it's a process. I have to take the exhaust system completely off. I have to remove the radiator, drain it and remove it. Engine guards, of course, have to come off. I'm going to unbolt the carburetors and leave them in place and drop the engine out from underneath. So anyway, stay tuned if you want to see the process. Okay, so I'm almost ready to drop the engine. So what I've done so far is, of course, I've removed the radiator, drained the coolant, removed the radiator. I've drained the oil and removed the oil filter. I've removed the timing belt covers and the rocker covers. I unbolted the carburetors from the heads, and I've supported the carburetors up to the frame with a piece of wire. I've also disconnected the fuel pump and removed the fuel pump. It needed to be removed anyway. And I disconnected the clutch cable and the brake switch cable and tied them up out of the way. You have to take that rear brake switch out because it's in the way when you go to disconnect your drive shaft, which is what I'm about to do next. That's probably the most difficult part of the whole operation. There's a circlip in there inside that U-joint, and these are the snap ring pliers to remove that. It's very difficult, so that's what I'm about to do next. I also disconnected the wire that goes to the oil pressure switch, and I've disconnected the wires that go to the fan switch. So it's almost ready to take the engine out of the frame. I still have to disconnect the wire on the starter motor. I've disconnected the breather, crankcase breather hose, and removed the breather canister. So it should drop right out now once I disconnect this wire and disconnect the drive shaft. I should be able to put a jack under it and unbolt it and wheel it right out. So stay tuned. But anyway, I don't plan to do any work on the carburetors at this point in time. Those carburetors were completely rebuilt about 2 years ago. So I'm going to leave them alone for now. They're working really well, so I'm not going to mess with them. I'm just going to work on the engine itself. It looks like I've got an oil leak in the back, maybe around the pulse generator cover. Maybe that seal inside there is bad. I'll have to take some things apart and investigate. I think I'm going to take the front cover off and put a new gasket and new O-rings in there. To make sure it doesn't leak. And I want to examine the clutch cover gasket very closely as well. Okay, well, stay tuned. I'll be pulling this engine out here shortly. So if you're going to take out the engine, you need to have a jack with a dolly under it. So this has wheels, so once I get the engine all free from the frame, I can just wheel it right out. So I use the jack, a couple blocks of wood on there, and now I'm ready to unbolt it. Okay, there, the engine's out. It's my breather pipe. So I need to study this and find out where the oil is leaking. Back here, it might have been coming out of the breather. So anyway, I'm going to study this and figure out where the oil leaks are, and then change the heads and clean it up good and put it back in. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, the heads are off. As you can see, I've got some cleanup to do. Got to get the gaskets off, clean it up. Got dowels. So now, there's the heads that I just took off, and these are all stock. Okay, and then here's the new heads that I'm putting on that have been ported and polished, and new valves and valve seats cut. And then if all else fails, there's my spare set of heads sitting on the shelf. So I've got 3 sets of heads for this. Of course, one of the sets came off of this spare engine I have sitting over here. But that engine, if I were to put it back in service, needs to be bored, so I'm just keeping it for parts. So anyway, so now I'm just going to clean this all up real good and address a couple of oil leaks, and then put the new heads on. So stay tuned. I cleaned that piston crown with a Dremel buff. So it's this. I just take this and keep going over and over it. Okay, so the piston crowns are good and clean now and somewhat polished. Bores look good. So anyway, now I'm going to clean the block a little bit more and then address the oil leaks. Now, I had oil coating the back of the engine. You can see it here. So this seal, which is on the shaft that drives the pulse generator, that's leaking oil out of the block. So I'm going to take that seal out and put a new seal in. And the other place that's leaking is this cover. This is a cover for a oil strainer for the scavenger pump. So I'm going to take that strainer out and clean it and put a new gasket. I bought a complete engine gasket set for this engine, so I can replace gaskets, and I bought also the seal kit, so I can replace gaskets and seals to my heart's content. So the goal is to not have any oil leaks when I'm done, of course. So, all right, well, I'm going to go off camera and just clean this up real good and fix these couple of oil leaks. So I'm finally ready to start putting the cylinder heads back on the engine. Now, here's what you need. You need to have your 4 dowels ready to go and make sure everything's clean. These are the oil passages that go between the head and the engine block. Those require 4 new O-rings. Here's the new O-rings. So you have to have that. Incidentally, boy, if you buy a gasket set, don't rely on the gasket set to have the correct size O-rings in it. I frequently find that complete engine gasket sets that you buy out there have the wrong size O-rings, and you have to source other sources for O-rings. Well, anyway, here's my engine ready to go. Everything's clean. It's all set. Okay, so I've gone over it and addressed some oil leaks. I didn't video all the oil leak repair stuff, but that should be, if you've got oil leaks, you know you know what to do. Now, before I took the engine apart, I marked the crankshaft. So I want my crankshaft mark to be at top dead center right there. Now that should set all my pistons exactly halfway up the bore. I'm going to check that. I'm actually going to measure and make sure they're all at the same depth, so I'll know that they are halfway up the bore. Okay. It's very important for the timing. $34.9. 34.9. Okay. So my pistons are all exactly halfway up the bore, and that will make it impossible for me to accidentally bend a valve while I'm installing the head. Now, I made another video on servicing the heads and installing them previously, so this video might be somewhat redundant of something I did before, or this part of the video. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is put the O-rings on here. Okay, my cylinder head bolts are sitting here. I poured oil over them, and they're sitting in this container full of oil, or with oil in it. Now, this is my oil passageway, so I have to put some oil on that, lubricate the O-ring, and then wiggle it. Push it in. I had to use a rag because it was in danger of cutting my finger. Alright, and then you've got the 2 dowels. Put a little oil on them. Alright. Next thing to do is to hang the head gasket on the 2 dowels. Now, if, which seems to be frequently the case, the gasket doesn't quite fit over the 2 dowels, so this one kind of fits. This one's definitely tight. Okay, so my hole spacing on the gasket is not perfect. So I'm going to take a Dremel and grind this a little bit. I don't want to get grindings in there. Okay. Okay, there. It didn't take very much, but as you can see now, my head gasket slides right on there. Okay, I poured a little bit of oil on my camshafts, so when this thing starts spinning, the cams will be oiled. Alright, now this has all been cleaned. Showed you in the other video. I just spilled some of that aforementioned oil on the floor. Alright, there. The head is just simply hanging on the 2 dowels in there. Now, this is important. Make sure you have oil on the threads of these bolts. There's 2 long ones and then a bunch of shorter ones. We'll get the 2 long ones in there first. And each bolt should have a washer under the bolt head. These are going to be tightened to 40 foot-pounds. I'm going to do it in 3 stages. There's 15. Crisscross pattern. The next step will be 25. Right, one more, this time will be 40. The engine's starting to move. So I need to change my position a little bit so I'm pushing down on my wrench. You want one more time to make sure? Okay. That's the first head all torqued down. So I'm going to turn the engine around and do the other head the same way, off camera, and then we'll do the pulleys and timing belts. Okay, now we've got the heads all bolted up, so it's time to put the backer plates on. Now on this one here, make sure that you get the wire in there behind the backer plate. There's a gasket that goes on there. 2 bolts. So there we go. I'm just using the 2 bolts to hold the gasket in place, and this will set right here. There's the other side. Okay, there's a piece of rubber right here that's supposed to be in between those 2 pieces of aluminum, and it was glued on, but it's not glued anymore. So I'm going to re-glue that and stick it back in there. It will tighten these to 10 Newton meters. Okay, when you put your cam pulleys on, they're both identical. The one on the right side will have the R facing out. I painted it red for clarity, but the R will face out like that. The one on the left side will be the opposite way. The R will be facing in toward the engine where you can't see it. Now these are secured with a woodruff key. So you slide your woodruff key in. Slide your woodruff key in. And then slide your pulley in place. And you don't put any oil here because the oil will get slung onto the belts. Okay, so these are supposed to be torqued to 25 foot-pounds. I'm going to do that after I have the belts in place because I can use the crankshaft then to hold these so they don't turn. Now, the only thing I want to show you here is, remember I set this at so that the pistons are halfway down the stroke. So these need to be set in the right place too, and I put a mark here and here. So I need to line these marks up. And over on this side, same thing. There's a mark. I don't see it, but I've got to find my mark. But there's a mark down here. It's, well, it's my timing mark. My red timing mark here has to be down there. So I need to line those marks up and then put the belts on. Okay, make sure your idler pulley is free to move like that. Do the left side first. Goes on the back pulley. Be careful not to turn the crankshaft or the camshaft. And line it up like that. Just snug those a little bit for now. Get the other side. Okay, now it's time to examine the timing. So we need to take the cap off. We're going to see the timing mark in there for top dead center. All right, top dead center right there. Now, we need to examine these timing marks on the cam. So you can see that exactly lines up. Let's look at the other side. And that one is exactly lined up as well. All right, now, last thing to do here. Well, two more things to do. Okay. We've got to make sure that the belt is tight across the top on the right side and across the bottom on the left side. So we loosen the tensioner, and then I just put a little pressure on this. Well, there. Okay, so that's snug now across the top. And then I want to just make sure that this is exerting its proper spring pressure on there, and then snug this down. Now once I've done that, I can put a torque wrench on my cam pulleys, hold the crankshaft with a wrench, and get this up to 25 foot-pounds like that. All right, and the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to recheck my tappet adjustments, and then I'm going to put this engine back in the frame. So I don't know if I'm going to film all of that, but I already showed you how to adjust the tappets. I'm just double checking now that I have the cams connected. Okay. Okay, I'm ready to put the engine back in the frame. Now I'm not going to lie. I'm going to tell you right now, the hardest part of this whole job is getting the drive shaft reconnected. It's hard to get the engine lined up with the drive shaft and slide it into place. So here's the drive shaft over here. So what I've done to make this a little easier, I used 2 zip ties, and I tied the accordion boot back as far as I could to get it out of the way, because it's really difficult to get the snap ring in there when you're fighting with that accordion boot. So use a couple zip ties to pull that back out of the way. And then also, when you go to put the accordion boot back up over the back of the engine, it hooks on right here, and this spring is the clamp that holds it in place. If the spring is in the groove here, it's really difficult to get the boot in the groove and under the spring. So what I do is, before I even start, I tie that spring back. I used a little piece of tying wire right here on the clutch cable holder and tied that spring back. So once I get the drive shaft connected and get the boot in place, then I can release that and let the spring go back over the boot. You have to be very careful with your vacuum advance mechanism back here, right there. If you bend that, it will be ruined. So don't bang that into the frame. All right, so I've got the drive shaft slipped into place. I've got the long engine mount bolt is started in, and the engine mount bolt on the right side back here. And I'm now ready to put the snap ring in there. This snap ring has to go in there on the end of the engine's output shaft. And you have to do it with a 90-degree snap ring plier like that. It's very difficult. Actually, I'm going to try to do it with get a screwdriver to push it in place, or guide it into place. I think I've got it in. That didn't go too bad. Now I'm going to rotate the back wheel to turn the drive shaft so I can look at the other side. Oh yeah, so I can see that the clip, I don't know if you can see it, but I can see that the clip is in place correctly. Once you have that done, you can cut these two zip ties and pull them out. There, got those out. And then you can put this boot back up over the back of the engine. Okay, the engine's back in the frame. All the motor mounts are tightened up. So the next thing to do here is to get the timing belt covers and the rocker covers put back in place. I'm going to hit them with some metal polish and reinstall them right now. Okay, it's finally back together and all ready to run. I need to put the top shelter and the seat on, and I can test ride it. So there it is. It's quite the project getting the engine back in the bike, but it's back in, all hooked up, exhaust system reinstalled. So let's see how it starts up after all this work. Now, if any of you aren't familiar with the Moto Gadget, 3 years ago I rewired this bike using the Moto Gadget M unit. So as you can see, the wiring on this bike is not stock. I recreated an entire new wiring harness. There's the connections for tail lights and brake lights, turn signals, and so forth. So anyway, there's the Moto Gadget. Now watch what happens when I turn it on.
Ride ready.
Now notice I did not turn the key for that, I just pushed the start button. Now when I push it again, in theory the engine should start. I'm low on fuel. RPM down by manipulating the choke. Watch how you shut it off with this Moto Gadget unit. Watch. A double press and it's off. Another double press shuts off the system. Okay, see that? You don't need to have the key in the ignition at all. That's a nice feature of this. It also has a built-in alarm system and numerous other nice features. But anyway, I made a whole video, 2 videos about the Moto Gadget 3 years ago when I rewired this bike. So refer back to that if you want to get more information about it. Okay, so I've warmed it up to operating temperature and I've hooked up the carb synchronizer. Somebody out there in YouTube land asked me if I would need to resync the carburetors after I did the cylinder head porting, and apparently I matched the ports pretty well, because if you look at my synchronizer, you can see they are perfect. So, and I, of course, they were perfectly synchronized before I took this apart, and they are still perfectly synchronized. So, that's a good sign, I think. And I don't see any oil dripping on my cardboard. I'm at 940 RPM. So anyway, I think that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and put the seat and the shelter on. Take it for a test ride. Okay, here it is, ready for a test ride. I didn't put the saddlebags and luggage rack and all that stuff back on yet. I will eventually, but for now I'm going to leave it naked. Yeah, so this was a restoration project actually in 2015. So it's 9 years since the original restoration on this. And it's been a daily driver. I've done thousands of mile tours on it, all over the eastern half of the United States. So this bike's been around and it's been great. It's been really awesome. So I'm ready to do a test ride now and see if I can tell any difference with the cylinder head porting that I did. See if it made a difference that's actually noticeable. I think the engine feels like it has more torque in the 3,500 to 5,000 RPM range, my mid-range, which is that was the goal, and I believe it is a noticeable improvement. Well, the valve porting project was a tremendous success. The acceleration and torque in the mid-range from 3,000 to 5,000 RPM has noticeably improved. It really brought this engine to life, and it's like a different bike. I can't emphasize enough, if you've got a GL 1100 like this, port the cylinder heads. Clean that stuff up, do a precision valve job, you won't be sorry. No, I did not have to rejet my carburetors. It seems there's no flat spots. It seems to work fine with the stock jetting. I'm going to look for a performance exhaust for this and possibly change the exhaust and see if I get even more gain, more torque out of it. But anyway, I'm going to end this video now. I hope you enjoyed my project. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel. Leave me some comments. Let me know what you think of my project. But I highly recommend porting your cylinder heads if you have an 1100. It's running great. Thanks for watching.